So, welcome, Praneeth, and as I said last time, welcome to this side. Uh, just last
Yeah,
year, you were attending these sessions on the other side of the table. I had seen you attending many, taking notes and asking questions, and so now you are on the other side of the table. You're helping others. So, thanks a lot for your time, especially on a weekend, that too early morning. And officially, I want to congratulate you once again. Just to let
thank you.
everyone know, Praneeth applied for the first time in round two, right?
Yep, in 2020, for cohort of 2026, and
Yeah,
then
for he applied for the first time for class of 2026, and he applied with the same score that we all know, that is 725, which is an extremely amazing score. But unfortunately, things did not work out in his favor. Why it happened, what might would have happened, we all will be discussing all that today. And then he immediately applied to round one again with the same score, and he is going to ISB with a 25% merit scholarship. That's again my introduction for him, and I would request him to introduce himself, talking a bit more in depth about your profile, especially about your profile gaps. So many people are concerned about gaps in the profile. So maybe we'll talk about that and then we will take it ahead.
yeah. So, just to give a quick introduction about myself, I am Praneeth Rao. I graduated in 2016 from Delhi Technological University in Production and Industrial Engineering. So immediately after graduating, I joined as an analyst at Bain Capability Network, which is the back office of Bain and Company, where I worked for an year and a half. And during that time, I decided to go for civil service. So I quit my job to prepare for civil service full time. So from 2018 to 2021, I prepared for civil service full time. Then I took a job at a boutique project consulting firm. And then along with my job, I continued to prepare for civil service. And within that, in project consulting, I helped leading public sector corporations like Delhi Metro and Steel Authority of India with respect to their major project planning. And towards the last 1 year of my tenure, I also did business development for the organization. And that is when I was in Mansicon, that is the project consulting firm that I told you about, is when I had applied for ISB for the first time in the round two, that is the winter of 2024.
Yeah.
And I took my GMAT in October of 2024, so just 2 months before round two. And in that, and also at this point I must also say that I took GMAT twice. So for the first time I took GMAT was in August of 2024, and that's when I got 675 in my first attempt. But somehow I felt that anyways I'm not applying in round one. And I really thought that I can still, if I work hard enough, I can still increase my score. So I took it again after a gap of 6 weeks, and then I increased it from 675 to 725. So that is there. So in that process, I applied in round two. So the first time appeared for an ISB interview was in January of 2025,
Yes.
and that's when. So we'll discuss in detail what I think went wrong and how I was able to improve it this time. So, but but at the same point of time, I was very clear that in case I don't get into ISB at that point of time, I will definitely not stick in this particular job, because I knew that I was not in a named firm, though I had previously worked in Bain, but that was long time ago. So along with my ISB application at that point of time, I was actively searching for other opportunities because I wanted to apply for join a different firm before I apply to ISB the following year in case I didn't get in. And in that process, when I was preparing for civil service, I had given an exam for EPFO. It just so happened that both my ISB result and my EPFO result came at the same time. And this being a central government job that are recruited through UPSC, I thought it would add more diversity to my profile for the my reapplication. So then I quit my project consulting job and I joined EPFO and in Hyderabad. And then with this job, I applied this year, and in fact, it turned out to be one of the biggest plus points in my application this year, because out of nearly 40 minutes of my interview, for for 35 minutes, we ended up discussing about my EPFO job only, even though I was 4 months into the job at that point of time.
Okay, so thanks for sharing that, Praneeth. Uh, Now, before we proceed, I just want to tell everyone in the call that, guys, this is an AMA call. I do not talk much. I just have to ask a few questions which I really want the the other panelists to share to everyone, and then I open it to questions to all of you. But when you are asking questions, just ensure that you switch on your camera and you ask it directly. Don't put it on the chat, uh, so that it becomes more interactive. That is number one. And second, for the first half of the session, let's try to talk about GMAT, and then we will move to the application part so that it is more streamlined. So, again, Praneeth, a very generic question to you, and then I will open it up for any follow-up questions from other people. How did you prepare for GMAT? What resources you used? How much time you took? And what helped you to move from 675 to 725? And Samiksha, before asking this question, you should have known that any scores in the multiples of 5 is always a GMAT focus score. GMAT classic score is always in a multiple of 10. So definitely these are GMAT focus score, whatever Praneeth just mentioned. And second, please do not put anything on the chat. You can ask your question directly. You can
Yeah.
unmute and you can switch on your camera. Yeah, Praneeth.
Also, just for context, I mean, as people know that GMAT scores are basically assigned to a particular percentile. So 675 translates to, in focus GMAT, roughly translates to 730 in the older version, and 725 roughly translates to 760 in the classic version. I mean, just for context for the applicants here. So, to start with my GMAT preparation, I mean, there is some bit of context I need to give, because I had prepared extensively for CAT when I was in BTech, though it had been quite many years since I picked up books again for GMAT, and it was a different ball game from the civil service preparation that I used to do. But I must say that the GMAT official guide is a more than sufficient resource to prepare for GMAT. No other resources required. And especially because I think that now with the focus edition coming in, lot of the other online resources that are there, they simply don't match the quality of questions that are there. Only
Yes.
the official guide in GMAT and the official tests that you take, only they come really close to the actual quality of questions that you will be facing. So, so when I first took GMAT, I had prepared for 2 months. And in that, what I did is that I first ordered the official guide from Amazon. For the first 10 days, I extensively studied the theory part of it, because especially with respect to verbal, where it is essentially, they say it's verbal, but it's essentially logic, where you have to understand how logic is formally structured and then be able to break down and dissect the argument. For that, it is very important that you formally acquaint yourself with, because a lot of people whom I've known who have struggled in GMAT, especially in verbal, a lot of them, what they do is that they directly start practicing the questions. Please don't do that. I mean, first try to understand of the theory of how logic works, and then in the questions you try to draw parallels with the theory. So please, because generally what happens is, because normally people, when they practice verbal questions, they just read the question and whatever of the five options seems the best to them, they just tick it. But there is a scientific process to it. I mean, so please do focus on the theory part for the first 7 to 10 days, or if it takes longer, please do that. In fact, I will say that only after you do the theory part is when you book a date, because because it may take a different time for different people to digest the theory part of it. After that, all there are four books in official guides. One is a common book, and then there are three subject specific books. So roughly all of them to put together, they translate to about 1,500, 1,600 questions. So I was working, but I was determined that no matter what, I will come back home and I do 40 questions, no matter how late it is. Because I thought that if you're consistent, I mean, just like another big issue that many people who are working alongside face while preparing for GMAT is the consistency part of it. I mean, someday, you might have had a really, really a long or a tough day at work, and then still gathering that motivation. So in that process, it's always better that, there is at least some progress every single day. So I mean, just decide like, okay, fine, I may have come home at 12 o'clock, but still I'll just try to practice 5 questions before I go to bed, so that, your consistency chain is not broken. But as a disciplined effort, I ensured that I definitely did 40 questions before I slept. So that meant that it took me, so there were roughly 1600 questions. So it took me about 40 days to complete my entire official guide. So in that also, what I used to do is that you can as much as possible to practice those questions on the online version of the official guide. And what I used to do is that whatever remarks were there that I had to write while revising those questions is when that I noted in the actual of the physical form of the official guide. And once a week, I used to actually go through all the feedback, any mistakes that I had made it during the week. So whatever my insights were, so those notes I used to, so once a week I used to, revise them again and again, so that while practicing, I don't make the same mistake again and again. In fact, even on the day of my GMAT, I had separately noted down all the remarks from all the questions that I had practiced, and then I just glanced through them, so that subconsciously, those give me ideas while solving questions in the exam. So in that, what I will suggest is that also try to practice all three subjects at one point of time. So, for example, one day you do maths, one day you do logical, and one day you do verbal, so on and so forth. But then just go like that. First do all the easy questions, then do all the medium questions, then do all the hard questions like that. Uh, Somewhere when you are like 70% into your official guide, that is when I'll say is the best time to start attempting the official mocks for GMAT. So I had purchased the official mocks. So there are roughly 12 mocks that you get, because every mock you can take twice. So all 12 of them, I did them very religiously, as if I was giving the actual GMAT exam. Generally, also there's a saying that give every mock test as if it's your actual GMAT, and give your GMAT as if it's just a test. And in that process, I did attempt them. And one more thing used to do is that every single mock test that I attempted, I used to take equal amount of time to go through every single question to see what was my thought process, and immediately do the revision of the test, preferably immediately after you take the test, because at that point of time, what was your thought process while attempting a particular question would be very fresh in your mind. And then you can compare your own reasoning with the reasoning that GMAT is giving, so that you will be able to sharpen your thinking process iteratively like that. So that's about it. And I think why so it's just that I thought that when I gave 675 for the first time, I did not. I thought that what was lacking on my part is that I didn't practice enough mock tests by that time. So whatever I lost out on at that point of time was essentially because in GMAT is also about your ability to take decisions at that point of time. Because in GMAT you are forced to attempt all the questions in a particular in the specific amount of time. Otherwise, there is heavy penalty. So as a result, it then comes down to your own decision making at that point of time, that how much time you want to allocate to a particular question. Because there are many times there will be questions which you are tempted to think that, okay, fine, if I just invest a little bit more time, then I'll be able to solve this. But in that process, what happens is that you lose the opportunity cost of solving 3 to 4 more right questions, which you might just do them wrong in the end, because you are in a rush to finish all the questions and then uh, do that. So then that decision making will only come through practice, and that is something that you will only develop a sixth sense through practice. So that is where I thought that the difference between my 725 score and 675 score was an adequate amount of mock test, because which then helped me to manage my time effectively during the test. So yeah, that's pretty much about my GMAT preparation in general. there are any specific questions, or Anshul, if you'd want to ask something.
No, I don't want to ask anything about GMAT, but I want few things. I want all the people who are taking GMAT in a few months to take note of few things, which I anyway propagate. And the first is, please stick to official questions. Please do not solve private GMAT coaching center questions. Praneeth is not on the only high scorer who has mentioned. We have done multiple sessions with high scorers, and everyone has maintained the same. The more you do these Veritas and Manhattan and TTP and all whatnot, the more chances that you will not get your desired score. These use any sources for preparation for the theory part. But while practicing, you have to stick to official questions. And from official questions, we mean all the four official guides. If you are done with all the four official guides, you can buy a previous version, an older version of all four books, which is easily available on internet or any OLX or even the PDF versions. You will not get all the new questions, but there will be at least 25 to 30% new questions. Rest questions will overlap between the current version and the previous year versions. Once you are done all with all that, every paid and free things available on mba.com, which are the mock test and question bank and everything, that is your next practice. If you're done with everything, you revise with these sources only. Do not go to any random non-official sources. This is a constant advice. Actually, till since my time when I appeared for GMAT exactly 10 years ago in 2016, 2nd January 2016. I remember the date as well. That time also everyone used to say just stick to official guide, official questions, and do not go here and there. And that advice still remains. That is number one. And second, as Prince said, be consistent. Things are not going to be easy for most of the people who are having a job, managing application, preparing for GMAT, but it is your job to come back to from office no matter how tired you are and sit for 1 hour and do your preparation, do whatever you have been scheduled. There is no excuse of my job was very hectic. You're doing it for yourself, not for someone else. And third, what he said, I'm again only repeating what Praneeth is saying. Praneeth just said. Third is maintain an error log and keep revising those error log. Know where you made mistakes so that you do not make similar mistakes in the exam. That's all I wanted to highlight about GMAT. If anyone has any questions related to GMAT, please unmute, switch on your camera, and you can ask directly. If not, we will proceed. Yeah, Animesh.
Hey, hi. Am I visible?
Yes, Animesh, you're audible, you're visible.
Yes, yes.
Hey, hi, Praneeth. So I've given my GMAT twice already. I have gotten the exact score of 645. But the issue I had is in my first attempt, my DI and verbal. DI was very good, verbal was acceptable, and quant was not very good because I come from an engineering background. But in my second attempt, my quant was extremely good, verbal again not so acceptable, and DI was again middle. So I'm not able to identify what I should focus more on. That is my first question. If you could give any tips from your experience. And second, when you meant verbal theory, what exactly would verbal theory, going through the theory for a week mean?
So basically, at the start of every official guide, there would be the theory that is required to solve the question. So, I mean, if you see the first 30, it's I think some roughly 30 to 40 pages of theory that is there that pretty much breaks down how logic works. Like, for example, how does inductive reasoning work? How does deductive reasoning work? So on and so forth. And then there are actually frameworks of logics which is given in the beginning of every official in the beginning of a verbal official guide. So please do go through that. And when you practice questions, try to so when you read the passage in your critical reading reasoning passages, try to draw parallels between the frameworks of logic that have been given and the passage or the paragraph that has been given to you in the question. So once you actively start to do that, first with the easy questions and then with the medium questions and then with the hard questions, so on and so forth, you will be able to subconsciously then there will come a time with sufficient amount of practice where subconsciously still you will be able to draw parallels with those theories, which will in turn help you identify five of the right answers. Like, what of the because I used to I like what like I spoke to other friends who were also preparing for GMAT. So a lot of the times in verbal, especially, what happens is that people just read a passage and then they go through the five options that are there, and whatever just seems instinctively right to them, they just tick that, and that is where a lot of the mistakes happen, because in that moment that option does. The thing with the difference between verbal and maths is, in maths you have to first solve to get a right answer, so that in all likelihood when you're taking an option you will be pretty much confident about it. But in verbal, uh, anyone with any amount of practice would be able to at least choose one of the five options, and that is where the problem is, because then in that moment if you are not well versed with the theory of how logic is structured, so then even the wrong option that you choose would seem right to you in the moment. So for verbal, I'll strongly suggest that you practice it. Please do take enough amount of time to go through the frameworks that are given in the beginning of the official guide, and then try to draw parallels with the questions. So, and then instinctively you will be able to, break down the logic and reverse engineer the question accordingly. For logical, for DI and logical reasoning, a little bit of I did refer a bit to target test prep, because in their theory, lot of these things have been given where for example, you have to sort the data. So, what is the best way to do so, or, what should be the first thing that you should be looking for in a data. Those kind of tips and tricks have been given in the target test prep. So for the first 5 days, you can create a free account and access those resources there. So I'll say that if you are actually facing difficulty in DI, then from target test prep, just go through the theory of it, because a lot of time, especially how do you deal with because there you have to actually interact with the screen in DI questions. So in that, a lot of those tips and tricks have been given as to, what is the first thing that you should ideally look for data in this particular type of question. Yeah, so that helps save time, because in my experience in DI, time is the biggest constraint, and doing 20 questions in 1 hour is usually the biggest problem. Yeah.
And when you say apply the theory in the questions in verbal, like
Mhm.
use the various reasonings that are given. By all means, in the starting, we can be painfully slow, and that can be okay, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And anyways, when you are, solving the official guide, the purpose is not to first work on your time. The idea is to first work improve your command over the core concepts that are there. It is only when you first develop your certain amount of command on the core concepts is when you practice the mock test, is when you work on your time. So it should always be in that order. First strengthen your core concepts and then you work on the timing part of it.
Got it. Thank you so much, man.
No issues.
Yes, Aditya, and then Sayantan, then Charisma, and then Shardul.
Hi, Praneeth. Good morning. So my question was, I had two questions. First is, did you maintain an error log while practicing, or like, is it effective to keep an error log?
So I didn't maintain a particular error log per se, but what I used to do is that whenever I used to practice a question, so there and there next to the question itself, I used to write the remarks. So then once a week, I used to just skim through all the pages in the official guide. So in that process itself, I ended up, revising the mistakes of that particular week every week.
Okay. And also in DI, you mentioned that, is there any specific strategy you followed during exam day? Because no matter how much you practice, it's 20 questions in like 45 minutes, or only like 20 questions in 45 minutes, right? So like handling that time pressure, is there any specific strategies that you maintain there in that particular section?
Uh, One, of course, no matter what, don't spend more than 3 minutes on any question. I mean, that's the worst case. And so, generally, what happens is that when you're practicing more and more mock tests, you instinctively know whether or not you are behind the scheduled time, or, when you, or if you are right on time. So, for example, So, for example, in my one of my mock tests, I ended up taking 7 minutes to get one particular question. And even though I got that question right, I in the last five questions, I couldn't devote more than 30 seconds to a particular question. So even so, that is something you instinctively learn by as you give more and more mock tests. So then,
Yeah.
so then it's an iterative process that so whatever trade-off you make, like how much extra time should I give to this particular question, uh, and then by giving more, let's say if I am giving 30 seconds more to this particular question, what would be the opportunity cost in the questions to come? That is a trade-off that you instinctively learn. So like for example,
Okay.
as you do so on and so forth, and because you are practicing the same type of questions again and again, you will also know whether or not you will be able to solve that question if you devote more time to it. That is uh, a consciousness that you will develop with practice. So iteratively you will figure out it's an iterative process that iteratively you will be able to understand that what is that exact moment where I should leave the question. But yeah, as a rule of thumb, don't spend more than 3 minutes on any particular question.
Yeah, if the choice is between like just leaving it unattended and like it's and guessing, always choose guessing, right? Because unattending, like skipping it altogether causes more penalty to your score, I believe.
I don't think you have an option to skip the score.
Okay.
So you have to mark an option before you move to the next question in GMAT.
Okay. Yeah.
The interface doesn't allow that.
Okay.
But
Thanks, Praneeth. Very helpful. Yeah.
yeah, sure. But you have to attempt all questions. Like even if you leave
Yeah.
one question unattended, there is a severe penalty in your score. So
Mhm.
in fact, in one of my earlier mock tests, I even faced this problem where I had spent a lot of time in the initial few questions. So in the last 1 minute, I had to attempt like 3 to 4 questions. So I had to just randomly mark options so that I could finish those 20 questions on time. But so that is the thing. So how exactly? So that time management will come only as you give more and more mock tests. There is no theory I can give that this is the for first question you should devote this much of time, for second question you should devote this much of time, like that. It's just try to solve as many mock tests as possible and try to just analyze how, and after your mock test try to brainstorm about what you could have done differently with each question, and then iteratively you will develop that sweet spot of when to devote extra time for a question and when to leave it. That's it.
Okay.
So like I told you, I took 7 minutes to solve a question, but that made me not solve 4 questions correctly. So even if I got that one question right after devoting 7 minutes, it was really not worth it, and it was a bad gamble to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Praneeth. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Sayantan, you can go next.
Hi, Praneeth. Hi, Anshul. Thank
Hi.
you for conducting the session. Praneeth, I have completed the official guide, and post that I have also given mocks and have taken 2 attempts of GMAT. And I have always felt that the official guide questions are somewhat easier than the questions that are there on the mock or in the exam. So, since Anshul is nodding his head, I believe that's not the case. And the problem here is the time pressure during the exam in my case, which makes the questions feel more difficult during the exam. So is that the actual case, and how can I overcome
I will
this?
just give my 2 cents for 1 minute and then I'll give it to Praneeth. It is never the case. Many people still say the same. Why it looks like that case to people is because the official guide starts from very basic, very low level questions, and then it gradually shifts to the higher level questions, right? That mix is not really there in the real exam, because in real exam, the moment you got a few low level questions correct, you will immediately be bumped to the higher level questions, right? That's how GMAT is. GMAT is adaptive. So you need to compare the actual GMAT and actual mock with the higher level questions in OG. They will match. Why OG generally seems easier? Because it has equal distribution of easy questions, mid-level questions, and difficult questions. But is the mixture same in your actual exam or mock? No. You do a few easy question, you will immediately move to the mid-level question. You do a few mid-level questions correct, you will be immediately move to the difficult level questions. And then you will say, oh, overall, I solved so many easy questions on OG, but now I'm official guides, and now I'm finding so many difficult questions in the mock or in the real exam because the distribution is different. This official guides are a repository of all types of questions, but the mocks and GMAT is adaptive. So please do not forget that. Okay, that was my opinion.
Got it.
Praneeth, if you have something different to say.
No, same as what Anshul said. So that pretty much answers. In fact, I think that the harder questions that are there in an official guide, they're actually, you know, not they're that's pretty much as difficult as that's the maximum difficulty level question that you'll face in your actual GMAT exam. So that is there. Coming to the time management part of it, as I said, that every mock test that I used to take, for example, the mock test is of 2 hours 15 minutes, if I'm not wrong. So then I used to spend 3 to 4 hours after that test, and I used to brainstorm on each and every question, even the questions that I had gotten right, as if if I could have been more efficient about it. So it is pretty much only that brainstorming that helped me, iteratively improve my time management process. But yeah, I mean, please do this exercise. I mean, it's not only true for GMAT, but any competitive exam that you give in future, take is not the job, because the purpose of a test is not to, and to be very frank, that the score that you get in mock test is pretty much immaterial, because the purpose of a mock test is not to know where you stand, it is to know where you need to improve on. And that answer you will only get when you give as nearly as much time that you are taken to give the test, just about as much time you have to devote to analyzing your mock test as well. So every single question that I had taken in a mock test, I used to take 3 to 4 hours after the test and brainstorm on every question if there is something that I could have done differently. And I used to add that to my error log or the feedback notes that I used to maintain. So that is the yeah, that's pretty much the only way to go about it. And also GMAT in your whenever you take an official mock, it does give you a very good analysis on what is that average time that you spent, what was the like, how are you performing under pressure, and then towards the end, as the number of the amount of time that you're devoting to a particular question, when it is decreasing, what is the correlation between that and your accuracy? So all that analytics are given very nicely by GMAT. So yeah, you do actually spend a good amount of time brainstorming on those analytics, and iteratively you will be able to improve. So yeah, that's about it.
Got it. Thank you, Praneeth. That is
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
Shall I go next? Okay,
Yes,
you're
yes,
on.
Shardul, please go now.
So, hi Praneeth, hi Anshul. Thank you for this session today. I had two questions mainly. One was specifically for verbal-based DI questions. I struggle a lot in DI questions where I have to, read and use verbal logic. I gave GMAT twice, got 655 both times. In the first attempt, I got 82 in verbal, 83 in DI. And in the second one, I improved to 84 in verbal. I got, I think, 5 questions wrong in verbal. But my DI score dropped to 75 because there were many verbal based questions in that particular attempt. So I wanted to get some strategies for these specific type of questions.
So again, I might be repeating myself, but then I'll once again stress, please go through the logic frameworks that are given in the beginning of the verbal OG. Trust me, and because I know a lot of friends who actually ignore that, because thinking that, okay, this is just very abstract theory that has been given. But when you actually, take some 10 days or so to really really digest those concepts, it actually makes it actually makes your verbal like maths, because then scientifically you will be able to break down that argument, and then same having those things readily at the back of the mind would help you with similar questions in DA as well. And also, I've said this already, but I do think that a lot of the tips and tricks that are given in the Target test prep portal, they are very helpful for DI. So for the first 5 days, you can create a free account and you can access all the resources that are given. And
Okay.
also, Anshul, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this or not, but every time you can create a new account in Target Test Prep with a new email ID. So when your 5 days free subscription expires, you can use a new ID to again access the resources. So yeah,
Mhm. Got it. I will try that. Thanks.
yeah.
And second was about getting mocks. So I have exhausted my OG mocks from MBA.com, and I had solved the entire OG for the 24-25 year. So I wanted to know if I can take any external mocks like maybe Experts Global, TTB, or anyone.
I haven't tried any of them, to be very honest. I stuck to OG and the official maps. But in my experience, no other private entities questions even come close to GMAT. So the idea is because I did, so for example, when I had access to the TTP whole portal, I did solve quite a few sectional tests. But I thought that it was actually counterproductive because when you're actually encountering a different set of questions, that the logic that you use to solve those questions is very different. Then if you're practicing those questions repeatedly, that means that you are developing your instincts in the wrong direction. So that is why I'll say that stick to OG and stick to the official mocks, because the inherent logic that you need to solve that question is pretty much overlaps between those official mocks and your actual exam. So then you're pretty much then by practicing those questions again and again, you're sharpening your instincts in the right direction. So, yeah,
Okay.
please don't venture outside of the official guide and the official notes. I mean, I'll strongly emphasize on that.
Yeah, but if I've exhausted my OG mocks, then any suggestions as to what I could do? Either you or Anshul.
I think so. Have you taken those 4 additional mocks that you can purchase?
Yes, all of them.
I think every time you purchase, you get a fresh set of questions in that. So it's not the exact same set of questions that are there.
Okay.
Otherwise, so for example, if you think you have hit a glass ceiling in terms of the score that you have reached, then I'll suggest that then you please revise the theory again and try to solve the questions again in light of the new theory. And as I said, especially in verbal, try to do parallels between the theory that has been given and the questions that are there. So, I mean, just as an exercise, I'll suggest that maybe just go back to the theory and try to solve the questions again in light of the new theory.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Yeah, Amir and then Vanshika.
Hi, Anshul. Hi, Praneeth. My first question will be very basic one. See, why can't we, what is the reason of GMAT only? Why can't we go with GRE? Will there be any difference for in selection process if we go with GRE? That point, I just want confirmation. Your
No,
thought from,
you can take any exam. There's nothing like that.
okay. Okay. Will there be any differentiation in the admission process or
I
anything?
just said you can take any exam. Why are you repeating your question?
Okay. Okay, second question is that my problem, I am facing difficulty in reading comprehension and DI part where during preparation, big paragraphs, I could not able to take, I am allocating extra time for the reading comprehension. How to overcome that point, I just want to
That
know.
Praneeth can advise what to do for reading
And
comprehension.
second, third one is that when the new official guide will be released for this year, what will be the difference? I missed that point when you said.
Yeah, so when the new official guides are released in around the month of March, if I remember correctly, between March to April, uh, around 25 to 30% of the questions are new with respect to
Okay.
just the previous guide. So it is always advised to buy the new one, even though you have an older version. That will just increase the number of official questions that you have in your repository. I strictly, during my time, there was no DI, only verbal and quant. So there were three books, OG, verbal review, and quant review. So I bought total six, one for current and one previous edition. So I had a
Okay, okay,
good number of official questions. And I have
okay.
advised many people to take at least one previous uh, edition as well.
Uh,
Yes. Now,
so,
talking about
yeah.
ours.
So as I said previously, do devote as much time to a particular, how much, whatever time you take to solve a mock test, do devote as much time to analyzing the test as well. So then you will actually understand whether, if you're getting a mistake, is it because of lack of conceptual clarity, or is it because of, your the difficulty in attempting the question in a fixed amount of time. So that differentiation you will be able to make when you analyze those questions after every mock test. So, for example, on case one, if you think it is because of lack of conceptual clarity, like I said, that in a lot of time, because try to brainstorm on what exactly was your reasoning while attempting a particular question, and then uh, how correct was your reasoning compared to the official solution that the guide is giving you, and try to then balance that. So as I said, that if the issue is with conceptual clarity, then you please go back and then try to strengthen the theory part of it again. As far as time management is concerned, that only comes with practice. I mean, I really can't say how to go about it. But then, of course, once again, if you're strong on your theory, then automatically that increases your ability to think faster during the exam. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Praneeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vanshika, you can go ahead now.
Yeah. Hi, Praneeth. I wanted to ask you that you said that you were attempting questions based on the level, like easy, medium, and hard. But should I also consider the topic, like go like focusing on a particular topic of questions, even in quant or verbal, like strengthening and then weakening? Because it happens that sometimes I am not able to get accuracy in assumption questions, something like
All
that.
right. Uh, See, the thing is that I mean, of course, it's a very personal strategy, and I can't, really, really say that there is one right way of going about it. But why I had advised to attempt an increasing order of difficulties, because as let's say you are attempting medium questions, then typically that silos of topics, it breaks down as the complexity of as the difficulty level of the question increases. So, for example, there would be a medium question would essentially be a combination of two, three different topics, and a harder question would be a combination of five, three different concepts. So as you progress from easy to harder questions, those silos of this type of particular type of question, it pretty much breaks down. So that is the reason I had suggested that you please work in the increasing level of difficulty, because for example, and as I also said, that every week I used to go through the mistakes that I had made. So because once you become well versed with a particular kind of logic, you will be able to use the same logic to solve an even more difficult question in that. So it's essentially the logic never changes. For example, if you see so if you actually see the medium level of questions or the harder level of questions, uh, it will very rarely happen that you will be introduced to a fresh logic to solve those questions compared to the easier questions. It's just that in a medium question, it would be a combination of five, six different logics rather than just being one independent logic like that.
That makes sense. And I think that if we are attempting the mixed questions, then our psychologically also, like I will not think that assumption hai to galat hi hoga, something like that.
Ji, ji. Yeah.
Okay. And for a quant, do you like recommend any particular theory, like for topic wise, if I want to understand something? Because
Oh,
there is a lot of thing on GMAT Club only, like there. uh, theory wise also there's so much stuff.
I may not be the right person because I do come from I had a prior CAT background. So for me, at least going through the theory part of quant was not an issue.
Mm.
But so I'm not sure because personally, in my experience, I thought that whatever theory was given in the official guide itself, that was sufficient. But I may not be able to generalize if that would be the case for everyone.
I just want to comment because I think I am better suited to answer this question because I come from a total non-quant background and my quant score was 50 out of 51 and I think 99 percentile, which was so I used Manhattan strategy guides for only
Okay.
for uh, basics, not really for solving questions. And I really loved it. They start from 1 plus 1 is equal to 2.
Yeah.
That scratch. And then
Mm.
slowly they take it ahead. I only used Manhattan strategy guides for quant theory. I did not use any resources, any subscriptions or anything for quant. After that, I solved OG and I solved quant review. And then I solved OG of previous version and a quant review of previous edition, I mean. And then, of course, whatever was there on MBA.com. I was extremely scared of maths. I still am in a way. But that helped me to get a very, very good score. So
Makes sense.
just sharing my experience.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that was it from my side.
Yes, Vaishnavi and then Charisma, and then we will move to the other part. We will not talk about GMAT now. We have to also end this session. We cannot sit indefinitely. Yeah, Vaishnavi.
So I have one question is how did you decide the section, like in which order you want to go for GMAT? First, did you go for quant or something? And what you would suggest me, like my quant is very weak. So someone with a very weak quant, what should be my preference?
Okay, the order that I followed was verbal, then DI, and then quant. But there is no right answer to it. I mean, it's a very, very personal thing. I mean, just that my idea was that I was the weakest in verbal, so I thought that I'll do it in the beginning when my mind is the freshest, and the section that I'm most comfortable with, I'll do it in the end where which I thought that I can relatively even confidently attempt even with a certain amount of tired mind. So that was the only, I mean, that was my only logic that whatever section that I was the weakest in, I preferred to attempt the first with the freshest mind possible. But again, there is no right answer to it, and everyone has different logics to it, and it works for them. Just see what your personal comfort it is. As you probably as you give mocks, you can experiment with the order in the first 2 3 months, and then eventually you will know for yourself what is the comfortable order for you. So
Many
yeah.
people say the same, but Praneeth said many people also say exactly the opposite, that you start with something you are the most comfortable with because that will give you a lot of confidence that, okay, I have done good, now you move to the next one. But majority of the people say what Praneeth says, that when you're fresh, because GMAT is something you will get tired by the time you finish the exam, mentally tired. So attack the most difficult part first. And this all
I have
discussion started at around 2020 when GMAT allowed switching for the first time. Switch between I mean, choose choose which you want to start with. Earlier it was fixed. So yeah.
I have also heard that for first section, because it's comparatively easy, if we lose a lot of marks in it, like if we go a lot of wrong, then they penalize you more for that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Because in the previous questions, the for the first part, the questions are easy. So if
yeah.
you are wrong there, you will never move to the difficult part. You will be hovering around easy questions only. And
But
that,
Anshul, just a clarity, but I think the GMAT is only question adaptive, it's not section adaptive, right? I mean, as in the sense that in a particular section, depending on whether or not you're
yes,
solving the
yes,
question
yes,
correctly or
totally,
not, or
totally. It is adaptive within a section.
yes.
Yes, that I think that's what she asked. Or did she ask something else?
Yeah, actually, I thought it gets harder with section?
Within sections,
Like
within section. Verbal
within
will
within
get
section.
harder within verbal, quant will get harder within
Okay.
quant. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Charisma, next.
Hi. Hi, Praneeth. First of all, 725, a really good score. Thanks for giving
Thank
us
you.
so much of your, experience and time. I'll make it quick. My first question, I purely want to laser focus on DI. For my GMAT preparation, I'm at a stage where I've completed the theory, the studying, and I'm now wanting to start the practice part. And when I'm doing questions for DI specifically, I kind of freeze because of the time constraints and the different information flying at you in the question. And for the practice part of DI, would you suggest TTP because you mentioned it for the studying part as well? I do not know if I should start off with the OG material now and exhaust it specifically for DI because um, I want more practice from the way I'm performing.
So TTP, I wouldn't suggest for practicing questions because, as I again said,
Okay.
that the logic that those different portals use, they are very different from the logic that you would be using to solve your actual GMAT exam. So you'll actually be sharpening your insights in the wrong direction if you there. But I did think that TTP gave very good, tips and tricks on
Yeah.
exactly what is the first thing you should look for. For example, there are these sorting questions. So then exactly, depending on the kind of information that is asked, what exactly you should sort out and like that. So for that, those tips and tricks, target test practice is really good. But then I will strongly again emphasize, and I think I've said this quite a few times in the session, that
Yeah.
please do stick to your
OG. Okay.
official guide questions only. And then as far as timing is concerned, as I said that because a lot of people they give mock tests, and one of the reasons why I am emphasizing this again because giving mock tests in the absence of analyzing actually doesn't really defeat the purpose because lot of people that what they do is that they give a mock test, they see acha mera itna score aa gaya, this is where I stand, and then they make their analysis based on the final score itself. And that's what I again keep on saying is that the score per se that you get in any mock test is in itself irrelevant because the purpose of a mock test is not to know where you stand. It is to know where you need to work on. And that answer you will only get if you devote 3-4 hours after the exam on analyzing each and every question. In fact, if you are getting an answer on what exactly you need to improve on, the raw score that you might have gotten in a particular mock test per se is in itself irrelevant. So just focus on that. And that timing part itself, as I said, that by analysis itself you will get to know. I mean, there is no formula to it. I'll just say because at every question, as I said that after every mock test, when I at every question, even the question that I'd gotten right, I used to brainstorm if there I could have been more efficient about it, so on and so forth. So then eventually, iteratively, like I thought that like I took 12 mock tests in total. So by the time I finished my seventh or eighth mock test, I could pretty much get a clarity of okay, this is what would be my logged in strategy for the exam, and then I tried to just perfect that strategy in the last 3-4 mock tests that I gave.
Okay, understood. I specifically asked for TTP because I've finished the TTP study part and I haven't done the chapter tests and the quiz, thinking I can save the practice later. Now I don't know if I should renew my subscription or just start with OG for
Uh,
the practice.
I would
yeah, please
strongly
practice.
suggest OG.
Yeah. Anyway, I've done the studying of TTP. It's 100% done. So I can just
You're
start with
good.
OG for
Yeah,
practice.
yeah, yeah. You're good too. Because the
Okay.
study part is the theory part, right?
Yeah.
You're done with the theory notes. You can straight with
Yeah. Okay, okay. Last question, sorry. I don't want to drag DI, but this is something I was reading online as well. Did you use any specific strategy to save time in DI, like guess for MSR questions and then come back? Because those are the ones that are most time consuming because there are multiple combinations of,
Uh,
possibilities. Or
no,
any
no.
specific strategy you have for DI that helped you? Yeah.
No, see, the biggest issue is with time management. One is again, I did, try to, while practicing the questions, I try to incorporate the tips and tricks that were given in TTP. And then,
Mm.
as far as the actual time management was concerned, it was purely iterative. I mean, whatever, like I used to give a test, brainstorm on it, and then at every question, I used to ask myself if I could, even like there were, as I said, that, in DI, there would be many times where you would be able to solve a question if you actually devote enough time to it. But then you need to ask yourself if, devoting that much of time is even worth it in the first place. So that trade-off is you will only, instinctively know with practice.
Okay, I
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
put a
Okay.
hard stop here. We are at 11
Yeah.
and we have only discussed GMAT, but I think
Okay. Thank
we have
you.
discussed all crucial points. I would also not want Praneeth to sit here indefinitely. So, Praneeth, quickly, I just want to know one thing. You were with me in both the attempts. And
Mhm.
it was a pretty difficult thing for me also to accept that a 725 person, that too in round two, not in round three, is not accepted. And I know what would have gone wrong. We had a brief discussion, not a very detailed discussion, because I never do a detailed analysis. I always say if you're rejected and you have already decided to reapply, you focus everything on reapplication, not focus on what went wrong. Right? But what did you think went wrong? You did everything possible in your first attempt as well. Yes,
Right.
time was a bit low. I totally agree. We were doing things at lower than what I recommend with respect to application. But what do you think went wrong? I want this to have be a point of
So,
discussion.
I did seek official feedback from ISB, and in
Huh.
fact, I had a detailed call with Amit Tyagi sir.
Uh-huh.
And I think I do. So he did tell me the actual feedback that the panel had written for me. So he said that even though they wrote a few vague things, they said that, because at that point of time, in at my first application, I had 5.5 years of work.
Yeah.
So they said that because I had a career break in between, and because after that career break, I was essentially starting from a entry level role all over again. So that pretty much meant that at 5.5 years of work experience, they couldn't see any profound leadership anecdote in my theory. And
Yeah.
then secondly, of course, as it happens, sometimes you really can't guess the
Yeah.
direction in which an interview would go. And I prepared on a lot of things. Then, but then in my like because I if you remember that year, there was a specific essay on what your short-term and long-term goals are, which was not there this time.
In essay three as an optional essay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, so they pretty much just took the fact that I wrote about consulting as
Consulting.
my short-term goal. So it essentially became I am guessing that they both were probably from the consulting sector itself. So it's essentially became on whether they would hire me in the first place. So then it just became a slippery slope. I think I just gave one wrong answer in the beginning, and then they latched on to that, and then it just became that.
This is something I
So
keep sorry to interrupt, Praneeth. I want this to be highlighted by everyone. I keep saying to everyone, uh, interviewers themselves are human beings, and every human being comes with a bias, which means the entire ISB interview process is not as objective as it should be. So things can go wrong because of the personal bias of the interviewers because they think in certain way. And if in that limited time you are not able to convince them otherwise, then it will go down the hill. And unfortunately, we can't do much about it. The only thing you can do is to give enough time for preparation so that you can manage these difficult scenarios if it may come. Yeah, Praneeth, please continue.
huh, yeah, that is there. So I think, so there were two aspects to it. The fact that I was, lacking a genuine leadership experience in my profile is a objective, parameter that I took, feedback that took it in my stride. And because I thought that, okay, fine, in the next 1 year that is there, this is one thing that is actually in my control. Whether, how that interview would go in those, 30-35 minutes, it's, partly in my control, partly beyond my control. So that is not something I can do that. So few things I accepted that okay, fine, that was just bad luck in on that particular day, but whatever I could change. So that was in fact a huge reason why I took the EPFO job,
Yeah.
because in government you get to head a department quite early into your career. In fact, it just so happened that because I had wrote about it extensively in my essay as well. Pretty much my interview in this particular interview, pretty much my whole interview was about my EPFO experience, and that actually turned out to be a huge plus point for me because it's a very different kind of experience, and then you get to talk about something that is a very unique part of your application.
But we also did very strategically. We wrote it in a way that it actually goes in that direction.
Yes,
Even though
yes, it
essay two
does.
topics were the same for your first attempt and second attempt, and there were hardly a few months difference, but we completely changed essay two. Uh,
Yes, yes. In fact, I remember I had a call with you after when I gave you my first draft of the first essay, and you told
yeah.
me very clearly that you wanted to highlight that EPFO experience in the very
Yes.
beginning of the first experience because
Yes.
you thought that that was the strongest
which
part of
which
my
goes
application.
which generally goes against my normal guideline. If you will look at other people essay one, it always started chronologically from
Hmm.
childhood, right? Because essay one is asking for key unique experiment shape your life. But for your case, of course, we had been unsuccessful in the first attempt. So I just was brainstorming that can be done that this time it goes in our direction only, no matter what we can
Hmm.
do. The interview should go in our expected direction, and I'm so glad it worked out. I was very happy when you told that the most of the interview went in the EPFO direction. And this is again one thing, guys, I want you to take note. Your application determines your interview only for ISB, not for IIM Ahmedabad. Please write your application with the lens of interview. Each and every sentence should be written while thinking, oh, will I be able to justify it in the interview or not? Does this sentence have enough hooks so that the interviewer ends up asking what I want him or her to ask? Is this happening or not? Then only write your application. Do all these
Uh,
checks before submitting. Yeah, Praneeth.
Yeah, just one more thing, because in my interview, in fact, I was pretty much asked the same question again and again because like you mentioned, that they take this 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep technique where they will take out one particular part of your application because they really, really wanted to know if I'm actually the person who I'm claiming to
Claiming to
be in
be.
my
Yes.
application.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So
Very, very
then
important.
So in that case, I will suggest that every single thing that is there on your resume or your application, please ensure that you have enough material to be able to speak 15 to 20 minutes just extempore on it. So try to prepare on every single thing, that what was the most complicated thing that you resolved in the interview, what is the one thing where you thought that you above and beyond your course of duty, where what is the ethical challenges that you face. I mean, of course, when the time of interview will come, Anshul will give you a list of questions. And in fact, I will strongly suggest, I'm deviating a little, but try to work on brainstorm on those questions early enough and run those answers with Anshul. So I will strongly, strongly suggest that. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, I think this is what I wanted to discuss. Uh, any of you have any particular questions related to application and interview part? We are not going back to GMAT. Feel free to unmute and ask. If we don't have, we both are happy to enjoy the rest of the Saturday.
Uh, in fact, I mean, Anshul, just a few things I wanted to share
Yes, please,
before
please.
that
If you
from my
already
notes
have,
itself.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Just one thing I found really, really helpful, that if you go to the ISB's website on the PGP page, there are a lot of these embedded videos from the YouTube channel of ISB
Yeah.
Admission. So there are some 7 to 8 videos. They are extremely, extremely helpful especially when it comes to your research about ISB. Because I thought that, in fact, I prepared very, very detailed notes on that,
Yes.
and I was able to in fact, in a lot of those questions, even if the topic was something else, I was able to bind them with my research in ISB. So, for example, so there was a particular video on block week. So there are very particular exercises that you are made to do in a block week, and so on and so forth. So whenever it comes to those questions like why MBA, why ISB, you have a much more tailored and a researched answer, because there is a generic answer that everyone will give. So to be able to that additional factors that because when you demonstrate your research about a particular school, it actually in a way shows your seriousness about that school. So
Yes.
for that, I thought that that 7 to 8 embedded videos which are there, just go to the ISB website. On the PJP page, you will find those embedded videos. Please do prepare very very detailed notes. Like I from those videos itself, I prepared some 7 to 8 pages of notes. So in fact, a lot of my research on the ISB professors or for example, like I told you that most of my interview happened around my EPFO. And then one thing I started to feel towards the end of my interview is that a lot of the research that I did about ISB, I was not able to, share that, demonstrate that with them. So when towards the end they just asked me that, is there anything that you would like to ask us? So I just said that I noticed that in one of the when ISBs in one of ISB's classes on supply chain, they used virtual reality to walk through the entire delivery chain of Amazon. So I was able to, that very, very unique piece of research about ISB, I was able to put that across. So that information that you will get extreme from ISB itself. Secondly, I thought that especially a lot of you who intend to write about consulting as your post MBA goal, please do go through to the ISB casebook. It is extremely, extremely helpful. So in fact, I made detailed notes from the ISB casebook itself. And when I spoke to alums, I actually shared my thoughts with them on the casebook and took their feedback itself. In fact, I was specifically asked during my interview if there are any clubs that you'd want to be a part of. And also, many a times you are asked a very generic question. I mean, somebody just asked me that if there are any clubs that you'd like to be a part of. I could have just said, okay, I want to be a part of consulting club or this club, and that would be the answer of it. And most times, they will not say anything, but sometimes they would be like, "Arey, theek hai, answer to theek hai, but maza nahi aaya." So
Yeah.
that is the time when you really, every question is an opportunity for you to be able to demonstrate the hard work that you have put in and your seriousness for this till that point of time. So, like when I was just asked this question, that are any clubs that you would be a part of? So, in fact, I said I'll take a position of responsibility at consulting club, and in fact, I told him very specifically that
What will
I
you
have
do?
spoken to these alumni, and then this is the feedback that I have got on the casebook, and then these are the specific changes that I would want to make in the case. So, even though that was not a direct question that was asked, I will say that whatever amount of research that you put in before your interview, you'll always find an opportunity to be able to share that with the panel, which actually gives you that additional impression. I mean, definitely it would impress that. And in fact, I even went to ask people that who were in the consulting club at that point of time and what are the exact sources that they refer to enhance that. And then, because I worked in Bain, I even spoke to my other colleagues at that point of time if there are other sources that you think. So in fact, I even listed that, okay, fine, at this point of time for the ISB casebook, these are the sources that they refer to, but I think that these are the additional sources that can also help them in this point of time. So yeah, that is there. And one more exercise that I would want about that I thought was really helpful. In fact, Mr. Nitin Bhatia, who was the mock interviewer that Anshul had referred me to, he had suggested that. He said that, make a list of 5 to 6 skills that you intend to gain from ISB, and then make a list of 5 to 6 courses and 5 to 6 professors, and then try to do that
Map.
mapping.
Mapping. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, so please do that. I thought that was extremely helpful. In fact, for example, because I was pitching about consulting as my post MBA goal, I very specifically said that, Professor Uppal, like, so again, these are not like no one will ask you specifically during an
Yes.
interview if there is a particular professor that you are referring to and everything, but just having that research will give you an opportunity during the interview to slip it in. So, like for example, as I asked me that how will this MBA will specifically help me for consulting, and I said that as a consultant, for example, I'll be a very common problem that I'll be solving is helping clients with their pricing strategy. And Professor Uppal, I've gone through the research that he does, and competitive pricing is one of his core areas of research that will I will be learning in his marketing course. So doing that mapping and those exercises really help you. Those are the 3 4 things that I wanted to share from my research before we go into
In
specific
fact,
questions.
Praneeth, the way you answered why consulting questions, And
Hmm.
how will you contribute to the cohort where you discussed what will you do if you become the president of the consulting club? I have quoted your answers to other people in during round two mock interviews just to make them
Okay,
understand
nice.
how to prepare for those questions. So again, there are few people, as I know, I don't know if you saw it or not, I have 66 admits so far in your batch.
Okay, nice, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
out of those 66, if I have to choose six people, top six people, you are one of the ones who was really, really, really prepared this time, not last time. Last time
Yeah,
also
yeah.
you were, but this depth was not there. Uh, but yeah, this was an impeccable interview, preparation for sure. There are a lot of raised hands, so I'll quickly take questions. But yeah, guys, keep your questions to interview and application now. Yeah, Rachit, then animation, then Anupam, and then Shashank. I think after this, we will end the session. Yeah, Rachit.
Hey Praneeth, thank you for sharing your feedback. I wanted to know what are the improvements you made in your essays and resume, and how were you critical of each and every line that's supposed to go into your resume and essays? And what were you lacking the first time, and how you improved in these particular areas at your second time?
Okay. I thought in terms of my essays, I say this with humility. I thought that, I did the best in my first time itself.
Yeah,
Uh, with respect to my interview preparation, I thought then, of course, the amount of research that I did on ISB this time was much more. The number of alumni that I spoke to, and especially because I remember, in fact, in one of my mock interviews during my first attempt, I could clearly see that, even when the mock interviewer, he asked me very specific questions on ISB, even though generally it's not the case that, no one will actually ask that, is there a particular professor that you're looking for? I couldn't answer those questions. And I thought that, this time I devoted a lot of time to research on ISB. And I thought that also, that research also help my clarity with respect to a lot of my other questions, that, how are you a fit in the cohort, or how would you be able to contribute, or what exactly the skills that you have gained. So the more research that you do, and compare, and coupled with the more brainstorming that you do, you will be able to have a better clarity as to, where exactly do you fit in that entire cohort. And then, of course, a few things that I said, that I thought that objectively my profile lacked the leadership experience, so I took up a job that offered just that. So
it
those are the
was,
two things
I
that I
think
did.
it was a combination of both this success this new job of yours, plus uh,
Mhm.
a very hardcore preparation. Uh, just wanted to point out one thing. I have not announced it yet, but tomorrow at 12 p.m. in the noon, we are having another session with someone who's going to be a classmate of Praneeth. His name is Atul Sashidan. His case is also very similar. He was rejected in his first attempt with the same profile and same GMAT score. At least Praneeth's profile changed drastically for his next attempt. Yeah. But this guy also, just with the same profile and same GMAT score, this time he's going to ISB. I'm yet to announce the session. Please attend. He will tell you how deep dived how his questions in the interview were mostly about his research on professors, on courses, which electives he would take, how these courses and these electives and these professors will help them to achieve what he wants to pursue after MBA. He was asked direct questions. And as Praneeth said, mostly you're not asked these questions as directly as that. It's onus is on you to answer uh, with these details to make an impression that, yeah, you have done your full research and you're fully convinced that ISB is the right school for you. But in Atul's case, which we'll be discussing tomorrow, he was asked direct questions by the panelist that, okay, tell me which professors and which courses you would take. And further follow-up questions just to check how well informed he is about the ISB PGP curriculum. So it is no-brainer that you start doing the research right now. Right now you have a bit time. As soon as the time progresses and you are nearing the deadline, you will start panicking and there will not be enough time to do full research. Okay. Yes, animation and Anupam and Shashank.
Hey, hi Praneeth. My question was, when you spoke to alumni say before your first or between your first and second application, with what mindset and what were the goals of approaching an alumni? Like did you have like a list of things you wanted to get out
Yes,
of them?
I had provided a proper strategy on how to reach out to alums, which alums to reach out to first, how to reach out to them. Once you have a reply from them, what questions to ask. So this
Yeah.
at
That's
validate.
okay.
Praneeth has done something extra. He can share.
Preferably reach out to a resume twin. That is one thing, and also do attend whatever alumni interactions that Anshul does. Try to attend all of them as much as possible because that increases your chances of finding your resume twin. In fact, one of the sessions that Anshul had conducted sometime in May last year was this with this person called Nikhil John, and it is only that was my first ever introduction to him, and it was only during that session I realized, okay, fine, okay, this person would be my uh, right person for me to reach out to. Then I reached out to his former colleagues in Nabat so that I could get his number, so on and so forth. In fact, if you just attend enough alumni sessions, you would know which alumni to reach out to, because Anshul has already worked with a huge diverse set of people. So even if you reach out to people that Anshul has already worked with, so
Are you still in touch with Nikhil?
no, no, I spoke to him once. So I got his number from a former NABARD colleague of his, so who
I'm not
was my
sure
class.
where he is joining. I have not asked him yet.
Okay.
He's not one of the people I don't know where is he joining. But yeah, again, his was a scary case. He was rejected by all IIMs back to back, but thankfully ISB gave him a straight admit. So yeah, good. But yeah, very strong guy. A bit weak in communication, which led to rejects in IIMs. But I'm glad ISB identified that he should be there. Okay, yeah, Anupam.
Yeah. Also, one more thing, like, also reaching out to your resume twin also helps you in the case, because there's sometimes, they try to grill you on very specific things. Like I told you that in my first interview, it did go downhill as to about my chances of getting into consulting. So I actually tried to reach out to people who had a similar profile as mine and actually made it to consulting from ISB, so that I could actually convince them, you know what, this is the specific, these are the three, four specific persons that I have known and I've spoken to, and I know that this is what they specifically did during their time at ISB, and as a result, if they can do it, I have a pretty strong candidature as
Yes,
well.
I want everyone to please keep a note for this. You talk to alumni not only to gain insights from them, but also to reference that conversation in the interview. Most of the times you have to convince them that what you are saying is actually believable and it is actually convincing. And this is one way of to convince them that yes, I have talked to these many people, this person from this class, this person from this class. These people had a similar pre-MBA journey as mine, and after MBA, they are doing what I want to do. And so they have done it. So what I'm trying to tell you, which means what my post-MBA goals are, it's actually doable. You have to make them believe. And this many people have advised in the past also. If you'll go to the past recording, Say Anthony has done the same. Say Anthony is current batch marketing club president. She talked to the ex-marketing club president for 1 hour before her interview, and she referenced this conversation in her real interview. Ria Mamoon Sheikh, class of 2024 or 2025, 2024 or 25, just check one. She talked to the public policy people from the previous batches and she referenced that conversation in her real interview, and she told, I have talked to all these people who had been into public policy after MBA, after ISB. That's why I think this is a good choice for me for public policy consulting. You have to make them believe by referencing these conversation. That's the reason I'm pushing people to talk to alumni. During Praneeth's first attempt, I was just mentioning that you should do it. In his second attempt, I institutionalized it. I made a structure and I asked everyone to connect to alumni according to that structure because it is that important. So please take note of this, all of you guys. It is important. This might give you that extra push that you need. Yes, Anupam.
Hi, Praneeth. So I have a question related to a feedback that you got. This was about the leadership role that is missing. So I just wanted to ask, how did you elaborate on that in your second interview? And also another question, that is, you have a lot of roles that you like, a lot of jobs that you did, 2, 3 jobs, I think, before the getting into ISB. How did you stitch a story around that? So if you could elaborate on that too.
See, firstly, you need to have a clarity on how exactly you have grown through as a person in that journey. And then a lot of the brainstorming will happen when you write your essays in particular. Like, because in fact, whatever, like generally Anshul's method is that while preparing for a particular essay, he'll give you actual pointers as to how exactly you should think about it. To be honest, with respect to stitching a story is concerned, I just followed, how Anshul's methodology of brainstorming about it. And in fact, a lot of my, coherent story and narrative, those things happened when I was writing my essays only. Like, don't treat your interview and your essays as two distinct stages.
Please, guys, take
Treat them
note.
as
Sorry, I'm interrupting you again. Please take note because this is something which most people do not understand. They take application and interview preparation in silos. It's please both are to, you're doing both of them together to get an admit. Yes, Praneeth, sorry, continue.
Huh. In fact, I thought that the more brainstorming I did at the time of my essays, that actually helped me during the time of my interview. In fact, lot of the additional brainstorming that I would have done at the time of interview, I was actually referring to my essays only. In fact, when I was making notes where I had to brainstorm about my own strengths and weaknesses, in fact, I used to just take a printout of my own essay and then I used to write remarks on every line that I'd written in my essay. So my essay pretty much worked as my base for my that is there. Regarding specific question of my profile that is concerned, I was very honest that there was a time in my life when I wanted to take a risk, and that is when I went for civil service. But then these are the skills that I have gained as a person, especially with respect to having a very nuanced opinion on things, and the fact that I was studying multiple subjects that helped me have a more multidimensional worldview. And that also directly ties in with, and also because I was preparing for civil service, it has increased my ability to work in more pressured situation because there's so much uncertainty that you have to deal with at the time of civil service. And all these skill sets are necessary skills that a aspiring consultant needs to have. And since I've already worked in back end consulting and also front end project consulting, and I can take that experience further and along with my experience in EPFO, where I'm actually solving problems, in the core of it. I told them that, I had the grievances department in the EPFO Hyderabad office, and this is how the situation was before I took charge. So I was actually able to identify that. And then with the help of, proper formal problem solving frameworks that I learned in ISB, like the specific examples that I gave, that I'll be learning pricing from Professor Abhinav Uppal, who's competitive pricing, who's is his key areas of research. So I'll be able to use that, and all this ties in neatly. What my past and my present ties in neatly to my future goal of going into consulting. So that's the rough idea of how I stitched into it. And then the specifics of it, as I said, that every single thing that I had mentioned on my resume, I made sure that I had enough point. If I just say, if somebody just asked me, okay, fine, this is the point in your resume, just speak on it for the next 15 minutes, I should be able to have that. So for that, like Anshul would be telling you about the star format when you would be writing on your essay. So on every single thing, every single word that I wrote in my essays and my resume, I knew, I was confident, even though it didn't come to that during the interview. They only took one specific part of it. But even if they had taken any other part of it of my application other than my EPFO experience, I'm pretty confident that I would have been able to speak about it irrespective of the number of cross questions that they would have asked. So yeah.
So that means the designation in your job doesn't matter, but how you tackle problems at your jobs,
Yes,
that kind of
yes,
leadership is more
yes,
important.
yes.
Yeah.
All.
Please understand when ISB says leadership, it doesn't mean actual people management at work. An average work experience of a ISB cohort is 4.1 years, the current batch. Even the new batch that Praneeth will be joining, it will be between 4 to 4.5 only. No one really leads a team in 4 years of work experience
Yeah, right.
officially, until unless they are at a startup. right? So leadership does not mean an official designation where you are managing a team. Leadership has multiple tenets. Just Google tenets, multiple different tenets of leadership. You will get different tenets. You need to tell them which tenets of the leadership you have exhibited. People
Okay.
management is just one of the tenets of leadership. There are multiple. There is one initiative, there is conflict management, there is taking charge when the actual leader is not around. Uh, there are many, there must be 9, 10 strong pillars or tenets of leadership. Please read about them.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Sharanya, last question, and then we will wrap up this session.
I hope I'm visible, audible.
Both, please
Yeah.
proceed.
Okay. Hello, Anshul. Hello, Praneeth.
Hello.
Congratulations on your admit.
Thank you.
So my case is also similar like you in small aspect. I was also a UPSC aspirant at some point. So my question to you is how the gap in career is generally perceived, particularly the gap owing to UPSC. Number one. Number two, UPSC and GAP, they are usually not, perceived in a positive way. So how would you project it in a positive way? I mean, how one is supposed to
Uh,
project in a positive way, and what are the pitfalls that one must avoid when they are showcasing UPSC in their application?
Yeah, I think Anshul would be able to attest to that. I don't think gap in itself is ever a negative. I mean, Anshul, I think you would be able to confirm to this. In fact, when I was preparing for my interview, also at least from my end, in my mind, I never perceived about it as a negative. I was always sure that okay, fine, I have this whatever experience that I've had has really, really helped me grow as a person, and I genuinely believe that my UPSC experience has made me a much more matured and a stronger individual, and I was very confident about that. So the first thing is that you yourself should not feel, lesser about it.
Yes. Yes,
Uh,
please. Many people start their first conversation with me that I have a gap. They are not telling me what are their plus points, where have they worked, what are their achievements. They start with I have a gap. They start with the negative. Nowhere ISB has mentioned that having a gap year is bad. You had a gap year for UPSC. I had a gap year between my 12th and graduation. I had 1 year gap. They really don't care. Every year I get UPSC gap people into ISB. One of them has even met to BCG. If BCG doesn't care about your gap, do you think ISB will care? So please, it's irrelevant. Any kind of Hiral current batch had two gaps, two different points at two different points in her career. She's currently sitting at ISB. I'm pretty sure she has grabbed a very great job also because she was really smart. Please stop thinking about gap. No one really cares. Huh, they might ask questions around it. Uh, and they will you have to just tell them why the gap was there and how exactly you have been working towards overcoming whatever you lost in that 1 or 2 year. But in technically, no one consider UPSC preparation gap as something really, I would say, harmful or something really debilitating, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, in the answers to one of my previous questions, I told them very clearly that I do think that my UPSC preparation makes me, a better consulting candidate than many of the other people, because I think that the kind of multidimensional and the nuanced perspective that I have and my ability to manage stress and work in very, very demanding circumstances, they have improved. In fact, I didn't get an opportunity to say it in my actual interview because it didn't go in
They
that
never
direction,
asked,
but
yeah.
they never asked. But in fact, in both my mock interviews that I had, one with Mr. Nitin Bhatia and one another with Mr. Nikhil, I was able to clearly tell them that I have really, really grown as a person because of this, and it very neatly. And I thought that because of my UPSC preparation, actually, I think that I'm a better consulting candidate than many of the freshers that you would get. Yeah.
Nikhil actually gave me a very good. He actually messaged me late night just to talk about you that he was extremely impressed with. He also said he tried to kind of
Grill me.
Asafai and grill you on many questions related to UPSC, but you managed them really well. So it was just few days before your real interview. So I was
Yeah.
confident this time. Okay, I think we are done. If someone has something very crucial, I might allow one more person to ask the question. Otherwise, we'll end the session. But guys, one strong request from my side. Please share the feedback. I will share the feedback link in the group. Whatever you felt about this session, it is important for me and to conduct multiple other sessions because, as I said, we are in mid of the info session season because I just have less than 1 month now. Within 28 days, the new batch will start. 27 days, in fact, from today. And again, Praneeth, before we wrap up, thanks a lot for doing this. I understand you must be very busy. It's a working day for you, right, today?
Aha, sort of,
Yes,
yeah.
I was guessing it's a working day for you because you are not in a private organization. But thanks a lot and have an amazing time in Mohali. And
Thank you.
feel free to reach out for anything. I don't think you'll need me again, but if you do, feel free to reach
No,
out.
no, but I would definitely like to meet you before I leave for
No, no,
Mohali. I'll tell you whenever
I
I'm
will
in
meet you. Don't worry. The moment you land in Hyderabad, message me. I will meet the next day only, no matter what. Okay.
Mohali.
Okay,
Done.
great. And all the best for the journey ahead. And guys, please share the feedback. I'm sharing the feedback link in the group. And thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope the session was helpful for
It was
everyone. Yeah.
crazily helpful. Trust me. I am getting DMs from many people who are saying it's very helpful.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
thank you.
So glad to help. All right. So all the
Yes,
best, everyone, for your ISB journey. Yeah.
thank you.